My child, what was stolen from you never reached the root. The loss was real, but it was not final. The surface was touched, but the deepest thing I planted in you is still alive. Stay near me, right now, as these words reach you, and let me take you down past the bare dirt you have been counting to the place where I have never once stopped working. You have been standing at the edge of that ground for a long time, reading my heart off the surface of it. The enemy of your peace did come through, and I will not pretend the field looks the way it did. Some of you are looking at a relationship that split down the middle, and the house has gone quiet in a way that has its own weight. Some of you are looking at a body that turned on its own strength, at a calendar crowded with appointments, at a future that shrank smaller than the one you had drawn. Some of you watered a hope faithfully for years and watched nothing break the surface, and you have stopped being able to explain to yourself why you still bother to kneel. Sit with that for a breath. Do not move past the ache of it too fast. There is a grief that the whole world wants to rush along, told it is fine, told it should already be over. I will not do that to you here. The ground looked full once. Now it does not. That is true, and it is heavy. And I'm not asking you to call it light. I know the shape your days have taken since the loss came through. The thing you keep doing without deciding to do it. The way you brace before you open a certain door, or check a certain account, or pass a certain photograph on the wall. The way a song you used to love now lands in your chest like a small stone. The cheerful question from someone who does not know, and the way you assembled a smaller, easier answer for them on the spot, because the real one would have asked too much of both of you. I have been with you in every one of those quiet adjustments. None of them were too small to notice. But listen carefully, because this is where everything turns. Stolen is not the same as destroyed. He emptied a surface, he did not reach a root. And before this message ends, I am going to take you to one line I wrote down a very long time ago for the ones who were certain the harvest was gone. A line about a man who scatters seed and then sleeps, while the seed sprouts and grows, and he knows not how. Hold that phrase. It is going to undo more of your fear than you expect. Let your attention soften for a moment before we go further. Not a prayer yet, just an unclenching. You have been holding this season the way a person grips a railing at the edge of something steep, knuckles white, arms locked, sure that if you loosen even a little, the whole thing gives way. I want to ease that grip, one finger at a time. There is ground beneath you that you did not lay and cannot lose. Let the railing go. None of what you carried is hidden from me. I have seen the page on your phone where you tally what is gone. Opening it again at the kitchen table at the end of the day because the sum did not soften the first 3 times you ran it. I noticed the friend who used to ask how you were holding up, and then, gently, stopped asking. And the small ache of the day you realized the asking had ended without either of you naming it. The voice memo you started recording to someone and deleted before sending, because the words looked too raw once they were out loud. The prayer that used to run long and has shrunk to a single breath, pushed toward the ceiling, some nights only a sigh with no language left in it. I was not looking away while any of it happened, and I am not looking away now while a quiet green thing pushes up beneath the surface you stopped watching. Here is where the enemy miscalculated. He is good at the surface. He knows how to reach what can be seen, the arrangement you could point to, the thing you could show other people as proof your life was holding together. So he took from the surface, and he counted it as the whole theft. But the root was never in your keeping. It was in mine. He cannot uproot what he cannot find, and he has never once found the place where I plant, because I plant below where he is able to dig. You are rooted deeper than the loss could reach. Consider how often you stood at the edge of that ground and read a verdict into the silence. You decided the nothing meant I was disappointed in you. You decided it meant others were favored, and you were the afterthought. You decided on the longest nights that maybe you had asked me for the wrong thing, or in the wrong way, or had used up whatever measure of my attention you were ever going to get. Notice how much of that you built out of bare dirt. The ground gave you no words at all, and grief filled the silence with a story, and the story was never one I told. Do not confuse bare ground with dead ground. They look the same from where you are standing. One is finished. The other is full of something you cannot see yet. You have been treating the first as if it were the second, and mourning a field that is not even gone. Here is what I would have said in that silence, if you had pressed your ear to the ground instead of reading the surface. The dark is not the grave you think it is. The dark is the nursery. Things come apart down there before they come together. And that is not ruin, that is germination. And you have been mistaking the splitting open of a seed for the end of a hope. Here is something small you can do before we go on, and it will feel like almost nothing. Let your shoulders come down 1/4 of an inch. Only that much. Notice how long they have been braced, hiked up near your ears, as if by holding your whole body tight you could stand guard over a field and keep it from disappointing you again. You were never the soil's keeper. You were never the one who had to force the seed up by the strength of your watching. Let your shoulders fall, and let that be the first honest thing your body says to me. Stay there a moment longer than is comfortable. Many people, when they finally let the shoulders drop, feel a small grief rise underneath, the grief that all that bracing was holding in place. If that happens for you, do not be afraid of it. It is not a setback. It is the ground turning over. Nothing can be planted in dirt that has been packed hard and never broken, and some of the tightness you have carried was packing the ground of your own heart so hard that nothing could go in. Letting it loosen is the first tilling. The ache that comes when you stop bracing is the soil softening to receive what I am about to grow. I am not rushing you. The whole world tells you to be over it already, to bounce back, to produce a recovery on a deadline. I am not that voice. I built the seasons, and the seasons are not ashamed of how long winter takes. There is no clock here but mine, and mine is patient, and mine is kind. You may rest before we walk any further into this. Now I want to take apart a picture of me you have been carrying, because it has made this season far heavier than it had to be. The version of me you inherited would have you believe that restoration is a single thunderclap. That if I were truly good, the field would have filled overnight, in one bright, unmistakable moment, and the fact that it did not means I either could not or would not. That my quiet over the slow months has been a verdict, proof I withheld, proof you were overlooked, proof the harvest belongs to someone more deserving, and you are the one left in the dust at the edge. That picture of me was painted for you, brushstroke by brushstroke over years, by hands that may have meant well and still got me wrong. Perhaps by a faith that only ever showed you a God of sudden lightning and never a God of seasons. Perhaps by your own grief, which learned, after enough disappointments, to read every quiet day as one more no from a God who had gone cold. I want to be gentle here, because the ones who handed you that picture were often hurting too, repeating what was repeated to them. I am not asking you to hate them for it. I am asking you to set the picture down, because it is not me. The God of sudden lightning and nothing in between is not the one who has been tending your ground. Think about what that false picture cost you. It taught you to read every delay as rejection, so the waiting itself became a second wound on top of the first. It taught you to suspect that my goodness was rationed, handed to the deserving, withheld from the ones who stumbled, and you placed yourself quietly among the withheld. It made you frantic. It made you try to earn the rain, treat prayer like a transaction you kept failing to close, treat worship like a performance you were always slightly behind on. None of that came from me. I never asked you to manufacture the harvest. I asked you to trust the one who tends the field, and the picture you were handed made that trust feel impossible, because it told you the field was a test and you were failing it. So let me say plainly what that picture got wrong. I am not standing over your ground with my arms crossed, waiting for you to prove you deserve the green. I'm the one on my knees in the dirt of it, hands in the ground, doing the slow, patient work that love does when it intends something to last. The waiting was never my displeasure. The waiting was my care, taking the time that real things take. Look instead at how I actually grow things. Watch how the whole created world tells the truth about me without saying a word. Not one living thing arrives by thunderclap. The oak does not appear. The wheat does not announce itself. The vine that will one day spread across a courtyard and shade a family through the heat of 100 summers begins as something so small it could be lost in the crease of your palm. I work below the line of sight first. I send the root down into the dark long before I let the leaf rise into the light. The growth that matters most happens precisely where no one is watching, where no one can applaud, where no one can force it along faster. You have been measuring me by the leaf. You have stood over the surface looking for visible proof, and from the bare ground you concluded I had done nothing. But I have not been working at the leaf. I have been working at the root, and the root is exactly where I am restoring you. What is rooted in me cannot be stolen by a season. Think about what a root actually does, down where you cannot watch it. It anchors, so the wind cannot lift the thing away. It reaches, finding water in places the eye would never guess held any. It feeds the part above the surface that everyone admires, while it takes none of the credit and asks for none of the applause. All of that is happening for you right now, in you, beneath a surface that looks like it has nothing left to give. The reaching has not stopped. The anchoring has not stopped. You simply cannot see the work, and you have spent so long mistaking what you cannot see for what is not there. There is something else the thief could not reach, and I want you to know it by name. He could not touch the seed I planted in you before any of this began, the seed of who you are to me. He cannot steal your belonging. He cannot steal the fact that you are mine. He can wreck a circumstance, scatter an arrangement, take from the surface of your life what you grieved with real tears. But the deepest planting, the one that says child and chosen and kept, sits below the floor of anything he can touch. He robbed a season. He did not rob your name in my mouth. That ground is sealed, and I am the one who sealed it. Say your own name to yourself now, once under your breath, the way you would say it to someone you were trying gently to wake. Just your name. Not the labels grief pinned on you in the dark. Failed, behind, too late. The one nothing ever grows for. The one who got passed over. Set those down and say the name I knew before the field was ever sown, the name I will still be speaking over you when this season is a long way behind you. That person is not finished. That person is not standing over dead ground. I am rooting you where fear cannot dig. Hear the difference, because it matters more than you know. Your circumstances live on the surface, where weather happens and thieves can reach. Your belonging lives at the root, where I keep the things I do not let go of. When the surface was robbed, it felt like everything went with it, because you had let the surface tell you who you were. But the surface was only ever your situation. It was never your standing with me. A storm can strip a tree bare and not touch whether it is still a tree. You have been bare for a season, and you concluded you were uprooted. You were never uprooted. You were only stripped, and stripped is not the same as gone. Now hear why the slowness is not the absence of the miracle. The miracle is not late, it is underground. A thing that springs up overnight has no root to hold it when the wind comes, and the wind always comes. To every field, eventually. The plant with no depth, the one that shot up fast and impressed everyone, is the first to wither when the hard sun arrives, because there was nothing beneath it to draw on. But what I am growing in you is going down, before it is coming up. It is putting out a root system that will still be holding when the next hard season blows through, so that when it finally does break the surface, nothing in this world will be able to take it from you again. The slowness you resented is the depth you were begging me for without knowing it. You asked me to restore you in a way that lasts. Lasting is not built in the air. Lasting is built underground, and it is built slow. Notice the order of it. The depth comes first, then the strength, then the fruit. You wanted the fruit on the first day. I was busy with the depth, because I love you too much to hand you a harvest the first wind could carry off. And there is a mercy hidden in the slowness you have not let yourself see. If I had given you back everything the moment it was taken, you would have rebuilt the very same shallow field, in the very same exposed soil, with the very same thin roots, and the next storm would have flattened it, the way the last one did. This is not me being stingy with your healing. It is me refusing to hand you back a fragile thing dressed up to look strong. What is growing now is being grown deeper on purpose, so that the part of your life that broke will not break again in the same place. That is not delay. That is repair done all the way to the bottom. There is a kind of healing that only papers over the crack, and there is a kind that goes down and mends the place the crack started. You have asked me, in the honest part of your prayers, never to walk through this particular valley again. I heard that prayer. I am answering it in the only way that keeps the answer true, by tending the depth and not just the surface, by growing something whose roots run past the reach of the thing that hurt you. The slow work is the prayer being answered. It does not feel like an answer because answers, you assumed, arrive overhead and all at once. This one is arriving underfoot and a little at a time. I know how that lands when you are tired. I know the part of you that would rather have the quick green and take the risk, just to feel something growing again. I am not scolding that part of you. I am only telling you what a gardener knows, and an anxious heart forgets, that the plant which lasts is never the one that came up fastest. Give me the season. Let me reach the root. What I am building down there will hold you on a day you cannot yet see. So when you feel like walking away from the field, and I know how close to that edge you have come, I have stood there with you on the nights you did not feel me at all. I want you to hear this. The tiredness is not a sign that nothing is happening. The tiredness is the ache of a long faithfulness that has not yet seen its yield. Do not grow weary in doing good, because the harvest keeps its own hour, and that hour has never once depended on your strength to drag it into being. It depends on the one who tends the ground. Keep sowing, even in the season that still tastes of salt and tears. The ones who go out carrying seed and weeping over it do not weep forever. They come back down the same road singing, arms full of what they once buried in sorrow. The weeping was never the end of your story. The weeping all along was the planting. You did not waste those tears. They went into the ground like water. Nothing you have wept over me is lost. Let your breath go out a little longer than it came in, once here, before we reach the heart of it. Let the next exhale carry some of the bracing out of your chest. You are about to hear the line I have wanted to read to you from the very start of this message, and I want you to receive it with your shoulders down, not up. This is what I said, written down a very long time ago, in Mark chapter 4, verses 26 through 28. The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground. He sleeps and rises night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows, he knows not how. The earth produces by itself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. Read it slowly. Let me walk you through it clause by clause, because every line of it is for you. Watch the man in that picture, and watch what his hands do and do not do. They open over the ground, and then they rest. Between the sowing and the harvest, he simply lives. He wakes, he works, he lies down, he wakes again, and the ripening happens without his supervision. He is not standing guard over the dirt at midnight. He is not digging the kernel up each dawn to confirm it is still alive, which is the very thing that would end it. He gave what was his to give, and then he trusted the buried thing to the ground, and the ground to me. That is the whole posture I'm inviting you into, not striving. Resting hands over covered ground, and the line I most want you to feel is the one tucked in the middle. He knows not how. The man cannot explain the mechanism. He cannot diagram the way a dead-looking kernel becomes a living stalk. He does not need to. The ripening was built into the ground by me, not arranged by his understanding. So sit with the part of you that has been desperate to know how the marriage could possibly mend, how the body could possibly recover, how the closed door could possibly reopen. That not knowing has felt to you like a hole in your faith. It is not. It is written into the very design of how I grow things. You were never assigned the how. You were only ever asked to leave the ground covered and let me work beneath it. I did not put that line in my word for scholars to weigh and debate. I put it there for the tired one standing at the edge of ground that looks like bare dirt, with a hand already half raised to give up one season too soon. I wanted you to know that the silence over your soil is not neglect. It is the earth producing by itself, the way I built it too, doing in the dark the work no amount of anxious standing over could ever speed by a single hour. Hear too what that line frees you from. It frees you from the exhausting belief that the growing is on your shoulders. The man in the story sleeps and rises. He does not lie awake straining to make the weed obey him. So much of your weariness has not come from the loss itself. It came from the second job you took on after the loss. The job of being the engine of your own restoration, certain that if you only prayed harder, believed more flawlessly, never doubted, never wept, the ground would finally cooperate. Set that job down. It was never yours. You are not the soil's strength. You are not the seed's hidden engine. You sow, and you sleep, and you rise, and the ground yields its crop on its own, because the power that makes things grow is mine, and has always been mine. What is rooted in me does not depend on the steadiness of your hands. There is rest in that, if you will take it. The harvest does not rest on your perfect faith. It rests on my faithfulness, which has never once failed a field I planted. Even on the days your trust is thin, the root keeps going down, because it was never being held up by you. It was being held up by me, and the one who tends that ground has already shown you how far he will go for a harvest. This is why slow does not mean absent. My son was placed in the ground like a seed, and for 3 days it looked like death had stolen everything. But the tomb was not a theft. It was soil. Resurrection was rooting where grief could not see it. He went all the way down so that down would never again be the end of the story. The grain of wheat that falls into the earth and seems to die is the one that bears much fruit. If I would go that far into the dark to bring up life, then I am not absent from the small dark place where I am quietly growing yours. Stay with those 3 days a moment longer, because you have lived some version of them. The ones who loved him went home in the dark, certain it was over, certain the worst reading of the silence was the true one. They were not wicked for thinking it. They were grieving, and grief reads the quiet the only way it knows. They were standing over a sealed stone, counting what was lost, exactly the way you have stood over your field. They did not know that the most final-looking ground in all of history was, at that very moment, the most alive. What looked like the end of everything was the deepest planting I had ever done. Hold that against your own bare ground, and let it loosen the verdict you have been reading there. Now look back at the field I showed you at the very start of this message. I told you what was stolen had reached the surface, but never touched the root. Here is the answer to why your heart kept reading the slow months as a no. You were watching for the leaf and calling the waiting a verdict. You stood over bare ground and read the silence as a sentence handed down against you. But the verdict was never no. The verdict, the whole time, was blade and ear and ripened grain, arriving in my order and not in yours. What was stolen is not coming back as a thunderclap to make up for the wait. It is coming up, slowly, surely, in the one place the thief could never reach. So here is something small to carry into the rest of your week, and you do not have to do it perfectly. When you catch yourself standing over the empty field, running the bitter sum again, try opening one hand in your lap instead of clenching it, and let your breath go out a little longer than it comes in, long enough to feel the bracing ease out of your chest. Then say, only to me, and only as much as you can honestly mean it, it is rooting. I do not have to see it to trust that it is rooting. You may feel nothing the first time. You may feel nothing the 10th time. But somewhere around the 30th time, on some ordinary afternoon, you will notice you have stopped tearing the ground open just to confirm something is alive. And that not digging is its own quiet shade of green, the first leaf of a trust finally going down deep enough to hold. And on the days you cannot manage the words at all, let the open hand be the whole prayer. An open hand held over a field is its own way of saying, you trust me with what is buried there. That is enough. What is rooting underground asks nothing of your eloquence. It asks only your confidence that I have not walked away from the ground. Watch what happens over time to the way you read a quiet day. At first the silence will still frighten you, and you will reach for the old habit of digging just to be sure. But each time you cover the soil back over instead, you are teaching your own heart a truer story, that quiet can be the sound of growth and not the sound of absence. Slowly, the fear that lived in the silence will have less room to live, because you will have filled that room with trust. The same stretch of waiting that once felt like a sentence will begin to feel like a season. And a season is something you can stand in, because you know it ends in a harvest you did not have to manufacture. There is one more thing to carry, because the old habit will try to come back. The old habit is to check, to dig, to stand over the soil and demand a sign that the restoration is on schedule. When you feel that pull, and you will, see if you can let it become a different motion. Instead of clawing the ground up to inspect it, press your trust back down into it, the way you would push a seed in with your thumb and cover it over again, out loud or silently, however you can. I am covering this over again. I am letting it grow where I cannot see it. Each time you are practicing the one thing the man in the story did right. He buried the seed and then he let it stay buried. That is not passivity. That is the hardest faith there is, to leave a thing in the ground and trust the ground to the one who made it. You will not master this in a week. You may not master it this season, but the mastery was never the point. The point is a heart that learns slowly to stop confusing my quiet with my absence. A heart that can stand over bare dirt and say, with a steadiness it did not have before, it is rooting, and mean it a little more each time. Do not measure how near I am by how the field looks today. The field is weather. My love is the soil underneath it, and the soil does not move when the weather turns. A hard week is not a breach. A barren-looking month is not a verdict. The slow stretch where nothing seems to come up is not me changing my mind about you. It is the depth I am giving you so that what comes will stay. What grows from the root cannot be stolen. He reached the surface. He never reached the place where I plant. Amen. If this devotional reached the part of you that had quietly given up on the field, leave the word rooted below. Just above this video, the pinned comment holds 7 short letters, one for each of the 7 days that follow. Carry them with you. And share this with someone standing over their own slow ground, ready to walk away one season too soon. You were never tending this alone.